Hall of Famers. So we've done Hall of Famers prior to now, and I'm going to keep doing Hall of Famers this summer. And I want to talk about Mike Gartner. I want to talk about Mike Gartner because this might very well be one of the best players ever to not win a Stanley Cup. And we may be looking at in Joe Thornton a guy who may end up having that same kind of legacy. Great player without that cup. Gartner also, much like Thornton, always in the shadow of other superstar players. In Thornton's case, it would mostly be with Crosby, but there's other cities crossed as well. Never quite been the absolute top of the league. Gartner, similar. Gartner also a winger, so didn't garner as much attention as he might have otherwise. Number 4 pick in 1979 by the Washington Capitals after playing in the WHA with the Cincinnati Stingers in 78-79. Played 78 games, 25 goals, 27 assists, 52 points. Not too shabby. So much like Rick Vive, who I talked about earlier this week, here we are with Gartner, an actual Hall of Famer, as opposed to a THG Hall of Famer, which is where I threw Rick Vive. But similar goal scoring, really, for Gartner, with a difference. This guy was so remarkably consistent. First year, 36 goals, 32 assists, 68 points in 70 games in 79-80. Might have got a lot more attention, but Gretzky. 80-81, plays 80 games, 48 goals, 46 assists, 94 points. 81-82, 80 games played, 35 goals, 45 assists, 80 points. Again, the consistency is remarkable with Gartner. 82-83, 73 games, 38 goals, 38 assists, 76 points. And as he's playing, the Capitals are becoming a better team. When he comes in 79-80, they are just miserable. They are still a shadow of what could be a good team. They are still remembering back to their disastrous 8-win initial campaign, their expansion season. In 83-84, 80 games played, 40 goals, 45 assists, 85 points. But as I said, they're getting better. And with Maruk and Gartner, they have two good scoring opportunities, or two good scorers here, and something to build on. 84-85, he plays 80 games. He gets his first and only 50-goal season. 50 goals, 52 assists, 102 points. So for people who haven't seen him, they'll be like, well, why is he in the Hall of Fame? Consistency. Absolute sheer consistency. He never won trophies. He was never standing there in June holding up a trophy for how awesome he was. He just very, very consistent. 85-86, 74 games played. 35 goals, 40 assists, 75 points. 86-87, 78 games played. 41 goals, 32 assists, 73 points. 87-88, 80 games played. 48 goals, 33 assists, 81 points. And during 88-89, this is where the Capitals have been good, not great. They feel that they need some kind of a shakeup, so they call the Minnesota North Stars. With the Capitals, 56 games played, 26 goals, 29 assists, 55 points. He gets traded to Minnesota. He's traded with Larry Murphy. It's a one-sided deal. For Dino Ciccarelli and Bob Rouse. That Minnesota wins that trade going away. He gets 13 games in as a Minnesota North Star. 7 goals, 7 assists, 14 points. 89-90, plays 67 games with Minnesota. 34 goals, 36 assists, 70 points. And then he gets traded. So didn't fit in for as long or fit in as well with the Minnesota North Stars organization before they move him to the New York Rangers. He's traded March 6th of 1990 for Ulf Dahlin, a 1990 4th-round pick, and a 1991 4th-round pick that would become Alexei Zhitnik, who would have a lifelong career, not for Minnesota though. But, Dahlin, as much as I would love to have seen Gartner play a role in the 91 run to the Stanley Cup final for the Minnesota North Stars, I can't regret picking up Dahlin. Now, in 12 games for the Rangers, he gets 11 goals, 5 assists, 16 points. And with the Rangers, it felt like because, you're in Manhattan, you're playing in MSG, he gets more appreciation than he probably did playing for the seemingly always mediocre. Even when they're good, they still end up finding a way to be mediocre Capitals. And, of course, playing in Minnesota, where the team is not very good for most of that time. 90-91, he plays 79 games, 49 goals, barely off 50, but he doesn't get 50. 20 assists for 69 points. 91-92, he plays 76 games, 40 goals, 41 assists, 81 points. 92-93, consistency with goals. 84 games played that year. They did play 84 games in the NHL that year for each team. 45 goals, 23 assists, 68 points. 93-94, the Rangers win the Stanley Cup. He plays 71 games, 28 goals, 24 assists, 52 points. Is he going to get a Stanley Cup ring? No. He is traded to the Toronto Maple Leafs for Glenn Anderson, a 4th-round pick in 1994, and the rights to Scott Malone. I don't know who Scott Malone is. But for Glenn Anderson, and honestly, it's a trade down to be frank. But Glenn Anderson, having been a part of a lot of Stanley Cups in Edmonton, putting him back with Messier. Gartner plays 10 games, 6 goals, 6 assists for 12 points as a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs that first year. And he goes on a decent run. They go to the conference finals that year. They lose to the Canucks. So if they'd beaten the Canucks in the conference finals, he would have met the New York Rangers in the Stanley Cup final in what would have been understandably epic, because here's a guy who's been in the league forever getting a shot at the Stanley Cup. But it wasn't meant to be. Vancouver knocked him out. 94-95, he only plays 38 games. He gets 12 goals. That ends the streak right there. His 30-goal seasons ended 12 goals, 8 assists, 20 points. 95-96, he comes back, plays 82 games, the full schedule, 35 goals, 19 assists, 54 points. But 95-96, not a great year for the Maple Leafs. And that summer, it's cost-cutting time. We've got to cut costs across the board. And as this magazine puts it, the ghost of Harold Ballard is still haunting the Maple Leafs as they have to do some cost-cutting. And Gartner's part of it. He is traded June 22nd, 1996 to the Arizona, then Phoenix Coyotes for a 1996 4th-round pick. He had 30 goals, and he's traded for a 4th-rounder because they want his contract gone. They want to restructure. They've got to fix this. 96-97, his first year in Arizona. 82 games played, 32 goals, 31 assists, 63 points for those Phoenix Coyotes. So 30 goals, that's his last 30-goal season. 97-98, he plays 60 games, 12 goals, 15 assists, 27 points. And it just seemed like when that spark was gone, it just disappeared. But Mike Gartner set a lot of records, and this is why he ends up in the Hall of Fame. Now, he ended up with 1,432 games played, which I know is pretty darn near the top in terms of guys who've played in the NHL and not won a Stanley Cup for games played. 708 goals, 627 assists, 1,335 points. That goals total, number 7 on the all-time list, 17 30-goal seasons. 17 of them. 15 consecutive 30-goal seasons, which is an NHL record tied with Jaromir Jagr. He scored his 500th goal, 500th assist, 1,000th point, and also played in his 1,000th game in the season of 91-92. He's the only player in NHL history to have done that. He was in the All-Star game in 1981, 1985, 86, 88, 1990, 1993, and 1996. So he was in a lot of All-Star games. And the 96 All-Star game, that's the year that Toronto trades him for cost-cutting. That's pretty brutal. He scored the last goal in Chicago Stadium history in a 1-0 win by the Toronto Maple Leafs, April 28th of 1994. That, of course, was during the Stanley Cup run by the Maple Leafs where they got stopped by the Canucks in the conference final. It was quite a career for him. He does end up being a Hall of Famer. This is where people might say, well, he didn't win trophies and he only had the 150-goal season. But overall longevity, 17 seasons. This is why when people say, well, is this guy really a Hall of Famer? He just played for a really long time. People will bring up Shane Doan. I am sure Patrick Marleau will be mentioned at some point. Does he belong? Does he not? And a career like Mike Gartner's might be the one that people picking for the Hall of Fame look at and say, you know what? He got there. So we can look at these other guys and say, in a different era and with the points and goals they've scored, and you do all the adjusting for eras. You guys know what I mean. It does allow other guys to potentially get in. He was a solid goal scorer for a very long time. And he was one of the fastest skaters ever to play the game. And dynamic scorer. And on a different franchise, probably would be remembered in a little bit higher esteem than he is. But for me, he was one of my favorite players in the 80s because the Capitals were one of those teams that I adopted in the 80s as a kid, just because they were so bad. I had this thing where, you know, if a team was really, really bad, I would kind of root for them. Colorado Rockies being the ultimate example of that. And I definitely did that with the Capitals, and then when they got better. 87 kind of broke my heart. He was with that team then that they lose the Easter Marathon game against Kelly Rudy and the Islanders. But very, very solid career. Hall of Famer for Mike Gartner. So for those who don't know who Mike Gartner is, now you've got the stats, now you've got the numbers, and the career he had. Fantastic player. I've had people asking me to do a video on which players who've been in the league have had a Hall of Fame level career. I did that video not that long ago, although I think it was 2 years ago now. So I can definitely go back and revisit that and do an updated version of that. And it's a guy like Mike Gartner that makes me think, yeah, you should probably go back and revisit it. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.